Now I figured that out. So now we're going to come to nice wide stance. Oh, look, someone else came. Now we can't talk. Just kidding. All right, so then we're going to come nice and wide and like nice wide stance here, toes forward. And this is like a nice time to start also thinking about your toes like really spreading out. So nice even weight throughout your feet and even in your toes. So don't start to scrunch your toes up and forget about them. We'll just hang down here and then we'll kind of go from one side to the other. Just kind of shift your weight around a little bit at first and mess around with it to see what feels good. And kind of let yourself hang, maybe let gravity do a little bit of the work. And then from here, we'll start trying to see how it feels with the knees a little more bent. So you can kind of like stick your butt out and push it back towards the wall behind you. So by bending your knees and kind of shifting your weight back, you should be able to start to try to feel this a little higher in the hamstrings up towards your butt instead of down like right behind your knees. So try that, kind of move around a little bit, and then also then try straightening your knees and more and bringing your weight more into your toes. So here we can focus a little more on right behind the knees where the hamstrings are kind of meeting the calves. My cat is here to stretch as well. And then we're gonna kind of go to one side, reach your arms across out towards the outside of that foot or your calf or your knee. So with any of these stretches, it's kind of like you don't need to like try to push yourself to go as far down as you can. As long as you're feeling like there's a little bit of tension in your muscle and you feel a good stretch, that's far enough to get a good benefit. You don't have to try to like be in pain the whole time. So yep, and then try the other side. And then we'll come all the way, arms together in the middle and kind of step in. So this will be our kind of our last big dynamic stretch to kind of get everything warmed up. We'll go walk in and out in the inchworm. So this is like one of my favorite workout warm-ups, but it's also nice just to kind of like get your blood flowing so you can get more out of the hold stretches. So we'll start in a plank if you're able. And I'll show you two options. This is the full option. So starting in a plank and then walk your hands up towards your feet. So as you walk up, try to keep your legs straight for as much of the time as you can. Stand up and go right back down. If you don't really want to do a plank right now, or if that's too much, then you can kind of just like rotate side to side. You'll still get the hamstring opening, shoulder warm up kind of benefit that we're getting in this full move. So there's no equipment required after we start the kind of main thing. But if you do have a chair around and maybe like a broomstick or a resistance band, I'll kind of tell you how to put those into the stretching sequence. All right, let's get two more after this. And last one. So I was saying like, I wanted to do a stretching class because I keep telling other people to stretch during my sessions. And then I think to myself, wow, I should really stretch more instead of just telling other people to stretch. So this will be good for me, at least. It's kind of selfish. So our first kind of big static, like deep static stretch sequence will be for the hip flexors. So it's a 3-part lunge sequence. The hip flexors are the hip muscles right on the front of your legs. So right above your quads. These get super tight from sitting at desks all day, especially right now when everyone has kind of awkward home desk setups, or a lot of people do. Yeah, so we're gonna start in a nice deep lunge. We've got the back knee down on the ground, trying to create as much length along this front leg this back leg as possible. So chest is up. I'm kind of squeezing my butt even by really engaging my glutes and squeezing my butt. I'm opening my hip flexors further. And you can even put your hand gently on your hip so that to kind of like add some gentle pressure. Don't like force your hip open with your hand, but some gentle pressure is okay. So here, so for all these static stretches, good rule of thumb, about 30-second hold is a good enough length to get benefit, unless you're 60 or older, and then something around a minute might be better, so a little longer. So from here, we're gonna go into our second part. We're gonna put the hands on the ground. So if you're able to. If you're not able to, a good tool here could be like a yoga block or maybe a book. So you just have something that's a little higher than the ground to touch down to. On the other hand, if you have super open hips, you can put your you can start to bend your elbows to deepen the stretch. And you can even go all the way to down to the ground if you're able to. So remember, we're just looking for something where you feel some tension along the muscle that you're stretching. You don't need to go further than that. When you're down here, take a look at your back knee. Make sure it's not collapsing in towards the center of your body, because we're trying to get in towards these inner hip, inner thigh muscles. So we want the knee pointing straight down or a little out. So let's hold this for a little longer. Kind of breathing deeply, which I always forget to do. And all right, so when you're ready, slowly come back up. This one can get a little intense for me, so just want to make sure to get out of it a little slowly. Start to bend that back knee even further, and we'll hit the hamstrings really quickly here. So we're bending our back knee further, and we're going to straighten our front leg completely. For this one, if you have good balance and you're pretty mobile, you can just use the ground. Otherwise, you might need to use like a small pillow or elevated surface again. We're going to try to reach towards the outside of this straight leg with both hands. So outside of the knee, calf, outside of the foot, however far you can get down. So with a lot of hamstring stretches, we're always trying to get this diagonal stretch, because that tends to be the hamstring that's the most overactivated and really too tight for most people. And it's the one that really pulls on your kneecap and leads to knee pain long-term. So if you ever have trouble with knee pain, you should probably be doing more of these kind of diagonal hamstring stretches. We'll do one other one later too. All right, good. So now let's switch over. Deep lunge on the other side. So remember, this is all going to be the same. So we're starting with our torso straight up, trying to create a lot of length along the front of this back leg, squeezing your butt to open your hips up a little further, and even putting your hand down on your hip for some gentle pressure. So yeah, this is the side when we have to I actually have to be hard on myself to keep going for the full 20 or 30 seconds, because I'm not distracted by all the time it takes to explain the stretch. So we still want to get the same amount of time. We'll take about 10 more seconds at least. And then we're going to go down to that second position with the hands on the ground or on a book or a block. So down here. And then remember, make sure your knee isn't collapsing in towards the midline of your body. It's pointing straight down or a little out. And then you can start to bend your elbows. All right, so again, we're going to try to hold this one for 30 seconds. So even if you're not sitting at your desk all day, this also gets tight from walking around, because especially in San Francisco, we have all those steep hills. So your hip flexors are basically always getting shortened for one reason or another. Good. All right, and then let's slowly come back up and hit that last third stretch in this little sequence. We'll get straighten the front leg, bend your back knee a little further, square the hips so both are pointing forward, and then try to reach towards the outside of your leg. Oh, wow, so my cat hasn't been trying to hang out with me for like days, and now that I'm doing this, she's all over it. Cool. All right, let's give it about 5 more seconds here. And then we're just gonna do it, well, actually, I forget. Let me see. Yeah, all right, so now we're gonna come up, and like I said, I wanted to get one other stretch for that hamstring that's like typically super tight on everyone. So this is where we're gonna need our chair. You can use a couch, chair, bench, whatever you've got on hand. Doesn't have to be super firm, but I kind of like when it's a little firm, because then there are fewer like squishy moving parts. So we're just gonna place one foot up. If you want to be close to a wall for balance, that might be nice, but not necessary depending on how confident you feel with your balance. So you've got one foot up, one leg on the ground, and we're just gonna reach over towards the outside of the leg again. So there's just something about being standing during this. You can really lead with your chest, straighten the legs, shift the hips back, that I think feels more effective than the kneeling version. But this is just good, so you have a couple options, whichever one kind of feels like it targets your hamstrings better. You can keep doing it in the future. So yeah, hold here. And then don't worry, we'll also do some upper body stretches. It's not all gonna be hips and hamstrings. Let's just try the other one real quick. And then we'll continue to use this little bench for bench, chair, couch, whatever you've got. We'll continue to use that for the next couple upper body stretches. Good. And you might, my hip's pretty tight on the side. So if you're really twisting to the side, you might also feel this is a good stretch on the side of your hip. So that's normal too if you're feeling it there. All right, good. So next few, we're gonna do a couple shoulder and lat stretches. So get the upper body a little bit. We're gonna continue to use our chair or our couch or our bench, whatever you've got. And then if you have something, this is totally not necessary. We're only gonna use it for one stretch, but if you do have something that's like a broom handle, like I just unscrewed my broom, or you have like a PVC pipe or some kind of dowel, just keep it on hand because I'll show you how I like to use it to kind of deepen this stretch. But we're doing two other versions of the exact same stretch that don't need anything, so don't stress too much if you don't have anything like that. All right, so we're gonna come in front of our chair and make sure you're far enough back so that when your arms are on the bench, like I'm about to show you, you can still have your knees underneath your hips, so you're pretty far away from the bench. So I've got both of my hands on the bench, and then I'm gonna scoot my knees back far enough so that they're still underneath my hips. My pinkies for this first variation are gonna be down on the bench, and my palms are facing one another, still at about shoulder height. So from here, I'm just gonna look down at the ground, tuck my chin slightly so I'm not like craning my neck up or down, very neutral spine. And then I'm gonna tighten my abs just to make sure the stretch is actually isolated to the upper body and the shoulders and not just my lower back arching. From there, I'm just gonna gently kind of push my chest and armpits down to the ground until the stretch feels deep enough. You should be feeling it in the shoulders, right on the outside here, down into your lats. So your lats are kind of the back muscle that runs along the side of your body. Yeah, so lats are actually a really big muscle. And interestingly enough, to me at least interesting, they're that big muscle that you think of that you would use to do a pull-up or something like that. And they actually tie all the way from your shoulders into your hips. So when you're like, how could tight shoulders mean like my lower body is messed up? It's probably because of your lats, because they actually tie from all the way from your hips into your shoulders. So they can kind of really mess the whole chain up. So yeah, I've talked long enough that we've definitely held this long enough. The next variation, we're gonna come a little closer to the bench and put the elbows on the bench. So this one, I think this one gets a little more targeted just because, I don't know, your elbows are on the bench. So kind of that end point is closer to the muscle you're trying to stretch. Fewer places for it to go wrong. So my elbows are on the bench now, same position, still keeping the knees underneath the hips, still keeping the abs tight, but I have my hands kind of in this prayer position. And then to deepen it, I'm gonna start to push my fingers tips together and my palms away from each other. So this one can get a little intense. So definitely after we hold it, we wanna come out of it slowly. Really like let your chest and your armpits sink down towards the ground, and then we'll come up slowly. Okay, so quickly, I'm just gonna show you what I would do for, what I might use this pipe for. So if you don't have it, I know like just watch, but it's actually really nice. So maybe you can do it in the future if you find something like this. We're gonna hold the bar with the hands at about shoulder height. get into that position again, and then just like do a curl behind the neck and back. So this is a nice way to kind of guide the line of motion, like really set it so you can't like kind of shift your body around and it helps you to get more out of the stretch, kind of keeps you honest. So yeah, here. So again, I won't spend too long doing this so that people that don't have it don't just have to watch me doing it, but just so you know, a lot of the time when I show this one to clients, they're like, wow, that is so good. I want to do that all the time. So, all right, cool. All right. So we're gonna come into a few nice lower back, chest and chest stretches. So this is kind of a favorite because I think everyone likes a nice lower back stretch. I posted this one on like my fitness, my personal training Facebook group today. So maybe one of you saw it, but we're gonna do it. We're gonna lie on the stomach now. So I'm gonna extend my arms out to the sides at shoulder height. So I'm lying here. Once you're in that position, just on the mat, no equipment needed here. We're gonna bring one hand underneath the shoulder. So my other hand is still extended out straight to the side at shoulder height, and I'm bringing my one hand underneath my shoulder. Then I'm gonna push that side up. You get out of the way. So I'm gonna push that side of my body up while keeping my other shoulder down on the mat. So the first part of this stretch, I'm just feeling, oh my God, right in this like front part of my shoulder that's still on the ground. Try to put a little more weight this in the pinky on that straight arm than the thumb and the pointer finger, just to rotate your shoulder in the correct way. From here, to add a little lower back in, we're just gonna lift the leg up, leg that's on the same side as the arm that's come underneath the shoulder, and kind of let it fall over the side. So it doesn't matter if you get too far on this, but imagine you're kind of trying to point your toe up towards your head, just so you get that like, that good, like nice leverage. So the weight of your leg is kind of opening up your lower back and your hip. If this doesn't feel comfortable, you can just stop at the stage before that, where you're just focusing on your shoulder. We'll do another lower back stretch that's a bit less complicated. So you can look to the side, to the wall to your side, kind of open up that chest. And then we're gonna come down and try that on the other side. So extend your hand out to the side, push up, and let your leg fall up into the up and over. So I'm pointing my toe up towards my head. And looking to the side, holding here. Okay, good. Let's come back to the center, push up onto all fours. So next, shoulder stretch. Let's see, yeah, we still have plenty of time. Cool, 10 minutes. We're gonna start in this all fours position. So wrists underneath the shoulders, knees underneath the hips, and then kind of tighten your abs as if you're just kind of like tucking everything in. Abs feel really contracted to begin with, kind of like you're like tightening your belt or something like that. I don't know, there's plenty of cues that people like to use, but those are a couple of my favorites. So then we're gonna start to slowly draw one hand underneath the body towards the other side. My palms up, I think that's more comfortable, but you can do either. And I'm gonna slowly extend my other hand in front of me until my shoulder starts to come towards the ground. Your shoulder doesn't have to meet the ground. That's kind of like the end, like for someone that has really flexible shoulders. But we're in this position and we've got our one hand all the way on the ground like this, and we're trying to let that shoulder sink down towards the ground. If you happen to be super flexible and you get to this position and you're still kind of like, oh, I need to make this even deeper somehow, you can start to shift your hips back towards your heels. But you want to focus on getting your shoulder to the mat before you think about shifting your hips back. So don't do that out of order. So hold here. You can rotate your hand around, see what feels better. And then bring that arm that's extended way out in front of you in to help push yourself up to the all fours position again. And we'll try that on the other side. So abs, check in on the alignment, wrists, shoulders, elbows, knees underneath the hips. And then we'll slowly extend the other hand underneath. Just do this on the other side. So you might notice on this one, like maybe this isn't super tight for you. Maybe if it is, like one side is tighter than the other. So that's like a nice thing to just take note of and think like maybe you're favoring that side a little too much. If you work out regularly, maybe you should try doing more things that are one arm at a time to even it out. If you don't, maybe think about some habits you have of like doing something on one side all the time, like carrying your bags on one arm, things like that. Okay, and then we'll bring that hand in to help push up to standing. And we'll get one more stretch from this position. So this is like a yoga like pose, puppy pose. I mean, I'm not a yoga teacher, so I'm not going to probably give all the yoga cues, but we're going to start to extend the arms out. And then this is kind of like you're almost going to go into a child's pose, but instead of that, you'll push your armpits and your chest down to the ground and let your butt stay up in the air. So for me, as someone that doesn't teach yoga at all, I'm just looking for a nice stretch along this part of my body. So it's a little similar to that one we did on the bench, actually. It's nice because it's a little more accessible. You can do it anywhere. You don't need to find a chair. And you can also play with your hands, like if your palms are facing each other and your pinkies are on the ground or your palms are down on the ground. Just see if it feels different. And then we'll just go all the way back to the little relaxing child's pose. My shoulders are definitely feeling a lot more stretched than they have in a while. Okay, nice. So I definitely want to make sure to get some hip stretches in. This is actually, I was a little worried it wouldn't take 30 minutes, and it's pretty easy to stretch for 30 minutes. So it's good to know. So we'll do a couple hip stretches. If you do have a bench, grab it again. I'll show you two versions of this though, so you don't have to. We'll do an elevated pigeon stretch. So we're gonna put our foot on the chair or the bench, whatever, as long as it's about as wide as your shin is long, you're good to go. You can even have it hanging off of the edge a little bit if it doesn't have like handles that are bothering you. We're gonna put both hands down on the ground, kind of hop your foot back a little bit like this. Again, good time to kind of focus on really spreading your toes out on the ground with that back foot. And then we'll slowly lower the knee down towards the edge of the bench and the other knee down towards the ground. So you don't have to get all the way to the ground. My hips are pretty open, so I tend to be able to go pretty far down on those, but don't push it. If this is something where you're kind of like thinking you wish you had a little more support, you can always like look around now or in the future, find something to put your back knee on so that you don't have to go down quite as far, but you still have support. So at home, this might be something just like pillows on your couch or like another mat that's just doubled up. At a yoga studio, you know, they have bolsters and things like that. So when we're in this position, well, I don't really want this, but when we're in this position, a couple things to think about will be keeping your hips square, pointing forward, so you're not letting your hips just rotate to the side, and then trying to keep your weight pretty like even, so you're not leaning towards one leg or the other. You can also do this on the ground, like you might have seen more often if you've done yoga. I kind of like it elevated just because I feel like it adds a little bit of structure, but I mean, you don't always have a good stable chair on hand. So all the cues will be the same. From here, after you focused on your even hips, pointing forward, even weight, you can lean forward to start to deepen the stretch even more if you need to, again. So, and this one also helps to squeeze your glutes. So a lot of the time, when your hips are over engaged, your glutes are under engaged. So by kind of engaging them and squeezing them, you can kind of help to open your hips more. In terms of strength, a lot of the time when your hips are too tight, that does mean you should spend a little more time strengthening your butt, because your butt's a really big muscle that can be doing a lot of work. Sometimes it's not, and then your lower back and your hips start doing it all. So it can definitely do more work than it does. All right, we'll come back up slowly and try this, whatever version, on the couch or on the floor. Try it on the other side. I mean, you might be able to imagine that like your butt is right here, your lower back's right here. Like if your glutes aren't working hard enough and they're so close to your lower back's gonna start taking over and doing way more work than it should. So yeah, it's surprising how much those muscles play into core strength, because it doesn't really seem like a part of your core. Right, we're focusing on the hips forward, even weight, and then leaning forward if you want. So whenever I do this one, I definitely realize I favor my left leg. So that's interesting. Just think about it. Like if one side feels way harder than the other, maybe you're kind of leaning on that leg a little too much throughout the day. Yeah, and for me, I mean, I'm a little skeptical about chiropractic work, but I have been to chiropractors that have said like, oh, your pelvis tends to like slowly tilt to one side over time. You need to come see me every week or else. But they're probably right though. Your pelvis can kind of start to tilt. All right, good. Let's get one more, just because I think that one can be a little intense for some people. So it's nice to have one other one other hip stretch that's a little like more relaxing, easier on the knees. So we'll do a figure 4 stretch. We're gonna lie on the ground, cross one ankle over the opposing thigh, and kind of draw your one hand through that little hole, triangular hole you've created between your legs, and the other hand around the outside of the thigh. And then we'll hug the legs in. So for me, I like to put really just the very edge of my foot onto my thigh, because I feel that gives me the most leverage to really pull this stretch in. You can put just your ankle across your ankle, have like part of your calf on your thigh, but I don't know. I think like having the edge of your foot really makes it easier to get good leverage here. And you can kind of rock around. Think about the same thing you were thinking on that pigeon stretch though. The hips should be pretty square. You don't want to be letting one fall out to the side too much. Yeah. And then try the other side again. Like think about if one of these is way harder than the other. For me, I definitely always feel this stretch more on this side I'm doing right now. My left leg is just generally worse than my right leg, I think, at everything. And I know it is probably 5:30, yeah, exactly. But I'd like to just do one last stretch just to get the hands. I think they're like often ignored. So plus it puts us in a good position to end because we'll be standing. So we're gonna face our chair, put the fingers down, the full hand down on the chair. So I'm putting my hands down so that my fingers are facing back towards my legs. And my wrists, my palms, they're that like, I don't know, like more like pale, you know, that side of your arm that's like underneath, I don't know. Anyways, facing away from you. So when you're in this position, think about putting more weight in your fingers and your knuckles and less in your wrists. So we're trying to put as much pressure and weight into the tips of the fingers and the knuckles as possible. This will really help you to excel in things like planks and push-ups, because often we experience a lot of wrist pain since we're not really able to distribute our weight throughout our hands very well since we have such tight little fingers. So if you're able to put more weight eventually in your fingertips and your knuckles, your kind of plank-like positions will be a lot better and less painful. And then just do this the other way, palms facing up, fingers still facing back, just to kind of like loosen it up. That other one can be a little intense, so this is just kind of a counter stretch. Yeah, all right, I think, yeah, it's pretty good. 30 minutes of stretching is definitely more than I usually do. So that's good. I think, let me know if there's something you really want to stretch for though. I'm happy to help with like specific requests. I was kind of thinking this would be